Today I'm going to read a short story, a new short story that was specially written for the revised edition of my collection, which is called The Prism. Since this is quite a short story, short story, I'll be able to read it in its entirety, and it should be under the 10-minute limit for YouTube. The title of this particular work is Egg Collecting. Piercing the brittle shell with a thorn and emptying out the bloody slime was called blowing the egg. I kept the collection hidden underneath my bed in a sturdy cardboard box filled with a layer of fine sand, into which I'd scooped concave depressions for the blown eggs to sit. When Robert Brennan told me about the moorhen's nest, I wasn't sure whether to believe him. Despite my initial skepticism, he said that he would call for me on Saturday. The second set of Brooke Bond picture cards that I ever collected, after British butterflies, was called Wild Birds in Britain, and the moorhen was number 29 in the series. There were 50 cards in total, and I stuck them into the sixpenny album with filaments of silvery uhu glue, which resembled the mucus produced by a snail. In an attempt to find the missing cards in the series, I even asked my grandmother if I could look through the unopened tea packets in her pantry. For children of my generation, the year was very much governed by a succession of seasonal events that took place in the natural world, collecting conkers in autumn, followed by potato picking in clarty fields, and hollowing out the fibrous flesh of turnips to fashion jack-o'-lanterns at Halloween. What I liked best, though, was the aroma of chestnuts roasting in front of our coal fire at Christmas, and how, when you peeled off the shell, the fruit was waxy yellow underneath. Now, though, it was the time for bird nesting, and so the two of us set off early in the morning for a stretch of the river, near a place that people called Scunny Woods. As Robert ambled beside me past fields of oilseed rape, his swarthy appearance made it look as if he hadn't washed, and when he spoke, his mouth pouted stupidly like a fish. In my copy of the Collins Pocket Guide to Nests and Eggs, the moorhen was called Gallinula chloropus. Although I was now studying Latin at secondary school, I wasn't familiar with those particular words. The eggs themselves were described as being pale buff in appearance, usually plentifully sprinkled with red-brown spots and specks, and I had therefore spent Friday night studying the colour plate in the book and envisaging how the blown egg would look when it was added to the others in the box. The riverbank was overgrown with dock and cow parsley. Despite wandering about for a good half an hour, peering into clumps of reeds and even looking underneath the bridge, we found absolutely nothing. On the way back, we took a shortcut through the playing field before climbing over the swaying wire mesh fence. Here, in a corner, we disturbed 4 boys who were huddled together, forming an impenetrable wall. When they heard our approach, they turned to confront us, and I could only just make out, beyond the tight screen of their limbs and torsos, another boy lying on top of a girl called Lynn Murphy. All I could see was the pasty skin of her bare legs, and that her knickers were bunched around her ankles. The boy had such a smug expression on his face as he ostentatiously zipped up his trousers. "Do you want to go?" he said at last, gazing impudently in my direction. I didn't understand what he meant by that, so all I could do was look blankly at Lynn and at the faces of the other boys for some sort of explanation, while a sense of resentment built up inside me. Why had he asked me and not Robert? All I could think of at that moment was a mocking song that we used to chant in the playground if we wanted to make fun of someone. You would insert a girl's name in the third line, especially one who was considered unattractive, and the boy's name in the fifth. On top of Old Smoky, where nobody goes, I saw Lynn Murphy without any clothes. Along comes Rob Brennan, clippity-clop, down with his trousers and up with his cock. Throughout this agonizing encounter, the refrain kept running through my head. Although I desperately wanted to leave, I stubbornly held my ground. "Maybe he's a puff," said one of the other boys at last. With that, everyone started laughing, even Robert, so I put my head down and stomped off, without turning around, as the shrieks, whistles, and insults continued to be hurled in my direction. Once I had escaped from my tormentors, I found a spot some distance away where I could be alone with my thoughts. Due to my stillness, a blackbird suddenly appeared and forced its way between the ivy leaves on a low brick wall to a nest that was concealed behind the vegetation. I watched it come and go, never flagging, as it sought to feed its hungry nestlings. It was then that I noticed a pale blue mottled eggshell lying in the grass nearby. I already had a blackbird's egg in my collection. In any case, there was no point in feeling inside the cup-shaped nest, since there would be no opportunity to experience that peculiar sensation as your fingertips encountered a clutch of eggs that were still warm to the touch from the breast of the mother bird. This shell had been cracked open from within. The chick, curled up inside its prison, had used its beak to break free. Here, in this sheltered spot, it would have remained hidden in the undergrowth for a few days, safe from predators, before plunging into the material world. Holding the fragile object in the palm of my hand, I reflected upon the nature of its confinement, and wondered if it had indeed survived its first few hours of freedom.